Okay, let's move on to this next thing. Okay, as you can see, information gathering is not necessarily as straightforward. There are a number of things that are extremely important to understand. Basically, we always think that when we say something, things are very clear for the person who is listening. Now, this is called verbal mapping. You try to describe a certain thing with some verbs. For example, you say blue. I am going to buy. You call your friend and say that I'm going to buy something, a shirt which has a color blue. Okay? So blue. Now let me see who has certain. Let me see your hand if you are wearing anything blue. Okay. I already know that I am wearing blue. Okay. Now you can see that the blues that you have are not necessarily comparable. So if you are going to buy a shirt, you don't know what kind of a shirt that person is talking about. Now, moreover, when we talk about different tones of blue, unless you specify that blue, the question that you are asking will be meaningless. So here, the important thing is that critical thinking will require you to ask, what kind of blue are you talking about? Then you have a lot of intrigues about the language that you are using. Okay? For example, how many different blues can you say in English? In Turkish, in your own language. And in your own first language. How many different tones of blue? So you can see that skills of communication is extremely important if you really want to be precise and explain certain things. So if I say blue, you will more or less understand certain things. However, it's not going to give you the exact thing that you might be asking for. It turns out that most of the real-life examples are imprecise in this fashion. That's the reason why you have to interrogate a lot. Okay, another thing is the source of information. Some of you in your term paper stage A told me that, they used different sources like opinion columns, which doesn't contain a lot of information. I actually gave them some remarks with respect to using those. That is already available. But to understand it is not easy. Now, you have to make sure that you have to distinguish between opinion, persuasion, and fact. Think about your team. Most of you are fans of a certain team. Am I right? How many of you are fans of a certain football team? I'm not. Okay. I'm not, but like sort of my hand is going up. Okay. So okay. Now, of course, when somebody tells us about our team, we have a lot of information about the team if you are following it. Let's say that you are following it. But most of them are not necessarily your opinion, but it's others' opinions about the team. For example, think about the newspapers. There are some sports newspapers in Turkish, and that talks about different things of those teams that once I understand, I basically don't understand what they are talking about, but they talk about some opinions, very biased opinions of the fans with respect to certain things. Now, of course, this is important because when you are asking question, you have to make sure that you are asking to the correct person or using the sources using a correct source, and this is in that respect crucial. Okay. Okay, so in that respect, personal bias of other people becomes important as well. If you are going as a consultant to a company and investigating about improving certain activities in that company, if you go and ask to the person who has been doing that activity for the last 15 years, do you think that you are going to get an unbiased answer? Well, this is very sharp, actually. Not necessarily no, but most likely you are not. Because there are some very good people who can question what they are doing, but most of the time, if you are doing the same thing for 10, 15 years, you become blind in the literal sense, and you basically don't see, you are not motivated, you don't see anything about your faults or better ways of doing the same thing. So in that respect, when you are getting an opinion from somebody else, you have to understand that there might be a personal bias. You want to buy an automobile, you are going to, let's say, a Ford dealer and asking about automobiles. So you can be sure that the Ford dealer, unless has other expectations in life, okay, will try to make best use of the Ford knowledge that he has to persuade you with respect to the specifications of the Ford car. Okay? But by questioning him correctly, you can clear up that bias. On the other hand, if you just read the document, and if you don't question the document, you will be biased as well. Okay? And your decision will be biased. Now, that's the reason why I already told you that you have selected some papers to read, but you seem to be cherishing the ideas that are given in the paper more than the authors, some of you, in the short statement that you wrote me. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you are simply saying that this should be done and so on, but you still don't know what's going on. That's only one person's idea that you read, and you immediately became a fan of the same thing. So you have to be very careful. And again, everything that I said here, of course, I'm teaching here, so you can take certain things for granted. But if I start to be very much sort of insisting on certain things, then you need to question me, investigate, interrogate me about why I am doing it that way, or can't we have better ways of doing the same thing, so on and so forth. So this is basically what is expected from you. Okay, so next thing, generalizations. This is actually a common fallacy that we have. Now, this is a statement. Student has stayed up most of the night studying for an exam. This is what most of the instructors will tell you. So you stayed up most of the night studying for tomorrow's exam, and you failed. So it is useless to study the night before the exam. Now, this is a generalization. Okay? Now, I don't know whether that generalization is correct or not. For some of you who might have a background on the topic, just simply working the night before for 2 hours might be extremely helpful, whereas for some of you, it might not be. So this is a generalization. Now, unfortunately, we are full of generalizations everywhere. And we have to understand that these are generalizations, and we critically have to find out the real information behind that and the facts. Okay, these are important. Now, another one is inconsistent argument. You make an argument, but it is not consistent with what you are trying to do in general. For example, I may tell you the following. Okay, we need to think critically before we conclude in this classroom. Let's say that we are going to decide on something. But I am talking all the time. I'm not letting you to talk. And I am simply telling you that we need to think critically before we conclude. So let's follow my proposal. Okay, this is dictatorship. Okay, so I shouldn't be doing that. And this is also inconsistent argument. So I am simply saying that we have to do it this way, and I am simply telling you a decision which is just the contrary. So this is inconsistent. Okay? So this is actually, I think, important things to understand when you are getting information from other sources. Irrelevant argument. This is also a lot of arguments that you hear on the TV and a lot of arguments that you read in the papers are of this irrelevant argument style. US presidents, okay, they have, if you enter the websites, I mean, as far as I remember, talk about irrelevant argument, US presidents, okay? And then you're going to find a lot of examples, okay? Irrelevant argument is the following. You should support the new housing legislation change. In other words, we want to change the law because the housing is a big problem and we want to provide housing for everybody. This is one statement. We cannot continue to see people living in the streets. We must have cheaper housing. Now, of course, at this point, it is irrelevant because one of the first sentence simply says that we need this. You might agree on that. But we are not sure whether the new legislation is going to provide the next two. So it is irrelevant. The first statement or the second statement is an irrelevant statement for the first one. It only makes our eyes a little bit watery. We start crying because there are some homeless people, and we have a tendency of agreeing with the first statement, but it is irrelevant. Okay? Now, think about how many irrelevant arguments you have heard last night if you watched a TV, or if you are in your Facebook page. How many irrelevant arguments? I mean, it is incredible. It's so widespread. Of course, informally, you don't want to be that harsh. Sometimes we smile and laugh to irrelevant arguments. They are so irrelevant. Okay? And I think cartoonists are very good with those. They make fun of these type of irrelevant arguments. Any questions on this? Any questions? Okay. Now, false analogy. This is also important. Now, the above statement is a historical statement. You can find it, I think, by Francesco Sisi in the 16th century, or I don't know. It's a very well-known false analogy. So it creates an analogy, but it doesn't have any sense. There are 7 windows to animals in the domicile of the head. Okay, we are also animals in that sense. So you have these 2, nostrils, mouth, and eyes, of course. Okay, and 2 eyes. Okay. I thought it was 5. Okay. From this and many other similarities in nature, too tedious to enumerate. Of course, it's too tedious to enumerate. We agree on that part. Okay. We gather that the number of planets must necessarily be 7. Okay. Number of planets. Okay, it might be 7, it might be 8, we don't know. But as you see, there is no analogy. This is called false analogy. And of course, if you are talking rhetorically somewhere, doing this false analogy, you would definitely hear a lot of clapping hands and so on. What a good orator this person is. But it's false analogy. Okay. Now, of course, all of these comes into what we call propaganda techniques. Okay? Propaganda techniques are something that you have to be very careful when you are critically thinking about something. Okay? And it's not only politicians. Okay? Basically, everything that is sold has been applied in anything which is marketed applies some kind of a propaganda technique. Okay? For example, being weak. Okay? If you see somebody helping somebody in a certain advertisement, you have a tendency of buying that product which is irrelevant with the product. That's a propaganda technique. Okay? If you see something weak, you have a tendency of trying to save that weak thing. Okay? And people have those type of feelings, especially more Oriental, Eastern cultures. This is definitely true. Even for Western cultures, this is true. Okay? So these are the things that you have to be very careful. There are millions of examples. If you are interested, just Google this word. You're going to see tons of different material related to that. Any questions on this? Now, what are we doing here? We are trying to gather some information, inquiry for our critical thinking activity. Okay, this is what we are doing, and we have to understand that that information is never clear. That's the reason why I am usually suggesting you to pick up the academic journals, semi-academic journals, where you have a full article, 3 or 4 page article, which has been edited, sometimes refereed by some other people. Make sure that this type of misleading kind of information or arguments are not in that paper. Anything that we write as academicians goes through, even if it is full of mathematics, goes through a very tedious refereeing, reviewing, and editing procedure so that we don't have any one of those. That's the reason why they called science cold. Science is called cold because basically you don't have anything that you will use for making yourself happy. There are no propaganda, there is no irrelevant argument, and well, sometimes there is, and everybody makes fun of them. Okay, and that's how we laugh. Okay, that's the only time we laugh. Okay, any questions on this? Okay, now exercise 1. Now this is just to show you when you say Asia, you mean something. So what I'm going to tell you is the following. Please, with your friend who is sitting closest to you, talk for 2 minutes, write down what you understand from the word Asia. 4 meanings, okay? 4 meanings, what you understand from Asia. Okay, 2 minutes has started, but you have to be quiet. Okay. You can do together, I mean, you can do by yourself, of course. Okay? I want to make you happy. Okay. One minute is finished. 1 minute is finished. You have another minute left. Okay, your time is up. So let me start hearing some hands on this row. Okay, so give me 2 names or 1 thing only. Yeah.
Most populated
Population. Populated countries. Okay. Another one from the middle row. Middle column, excuse me. Yes. Yeah. Okay, eyes. Okay, that's a little bit racist, so I have to make sure that it's correct. Okay, yes, another one. Yes. Shh. Huh? Small people. Okay. Well, I'm going to criticize you very heavily. Okay. Somebody from the middle. Yes. Technology. Okay, yeah. Another one here. I didn't hear you. Deserts. Okay, somebody from the middle. Yes. Huh? I didn't hear you. Louder. Trade. Trade. Trade road. Okay. Silk Road, you mean? Okay. Did you mean Silk Road? Did you mean this? I didn't hear you, so. No. Shh, arkadaşlar.
I guess it's the other one.
Trade Road.
No.
You have to be very specific. Okay. Shh. Arkadaşlar. Yes.
I don't know the name in English, but Spicy Road.
Spice Road. It's okay. Baharat yolu. Spice Road. Okay, that's Trade Road. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Bad products. Bad products.
Bad products. Okay, anybody who doesn't have any racist or biased account of Asia? Yes. Rice. No, so this is not. Okay. If somebody, when they are asked about Turkey, tells you about kebab, would you be happy with that? Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. Shh. Yes. Great Wall of China. Okay. I think I have enough evidence to show you my point. Now, number one, when in a talk, if you are giving an analogy using Asia, you can see that in your minds, what they have created with that image, with that example, is a number of different things. Unfortunately, most of them are not welcome. Because basically you are talking about some properties, some characteristics of race, ethnicity, which is not, probably it should be beyond what you should be doing in this world in the 21st century, sitting at the university chair, okay? But I think, well, whatever, you can see that some people think about technology, some people think about some personal characteristics, some people think about geographical characteristics, some people talk about historical monuments, okay? And so in that respect, when you ask somebody, non-Turkish people about Turkey, if they talk about kebab, if they talk about Midnight Express, if they talk about Ottomans, if they talk about Bosphorus, if they talk about the new industrial state, okay, you shouldn't be surprised. Because this is basically the image that you have about Asia. So it is very important that when somebody tells you Asia, you should be asking that person, what characteristics of Asia are you considering in this example? Unless you do that, the communication will never be two-sided. Okay? Is my point clear? This is what I wanted to obtain, actually. Now, I gave you 2 minutes. Actually, I should have done this instantly, rather than giving you 2 minutes to think about, because some of you thought about that, but some of you only thought about for 10 seconds and gave those answers, which is acceptable. Actually, that should be the way. That should be the natural way that things should run out. Any questions on this? Okay, now write your names and the partner's name that worked on these issues and submit it to me before you leave the classroom. Okay? Write those 3 words and your names. Or whatever words you have computed. You can do it actually just, that's what I will ask you to do. Okay? Okay, shh. I need to give another example. Arkadaşlar. Come on. Okay, you don't do anything yet, please. Okay, next example. Next example, don't do anything. If you overdo that, I am not going to grade your paper. Okay. Arkadaşlar, shh. Okay. Now, this is exercise 2. This is how certain words manipulate people's mind. There has been a study at Yale several years ago, and they have found 12 most persuasive words in English language. What do you mean by persuasive? When you use these words in a sentence, standard people would immediately think that there is something good going on. Okay? Now let's look at these words. They are very simple. Their common characteristics are they are very familiar, and they are sometimes very dramatic. For example, guarantee. If you are selling something in an ad, you use the word guarantee, but guarantee is under probably very restricted conditions, but it doesn't matter. You spell out the word guarantee there. That is going to immediately give you an idea on the product which is sold. Discovery. We have a new discovery. This product is a result of a new discovery. Health. It's going to be good for your health, or anything that reminds you of health if you are selling a product. Now, can you give me one or two examples of ads that you remember which uses these words, even if we are not speaking in English in Turkey in general? But there are some ads which uses these words. Do you remember any of those ads? So you're not very good for the advertisement people if you don't remember any ads. Yes?
Well, there's this advertisement about fixing your car scratches.
Okay.
It says it's guaranteed to fix your car scratches by...
So-and-so paint. Okay. That's something which is sold like every night. You have half an hour that you hear the same thing over and over again. Good. Okay. Anything else? Yes? Bioxin is a medicine supplement, something like that. Okay, yeah. They talk about health, and it's new, and you also have discovery there, and again guarantee there. Okay. So you can see that by selecting these words, you can easily be manipulated. Okay? So this is the key for propaganda, actually. Okay? So you have to understand which words are really affecting different people. Okay? For example, you don't remember this, but basically in old times, in 1980, in 1971, in 1960, national security was a word like that in Turkey. National security, it's still a word, I think, in Turkey, all over the world. When you say national security, you tend to not to ask more questions because it's a matter of national security. Okay? So this is basically, there are certain limitations, biases, and we have to understand that. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Let's have a third one. False analogy. This is what we love to do with younger people. When I was at your age, okay? Now, give me a number of examples from your maybe relatives or from your own circles on this, and explain why it is a false analogy. Okay, yes?
Can it be from a TV show?
Of course it can be from a TV show.
There's this TV show called When I Was 17,
Uh-huh.
and it basically gathers artists and asks the artists to tell their stories when they were 17, and what experiences they went through, what they did, what they liked, what they didn't like, and how they basically lived their life when they were 17.
Okay, what is the false analogy here?
It's a generalization.
Okay, it's a generalization because you start thinking that you create an analogy between yourself and that person, and that takes you to different types of worlds that your expectations become different. Okay. Anybody else who wants to give an example to this? Anybody? So when I was at your age, I wasn't scared when a question like this was asked. Okay, so is this a false analogy? So who says no? I think voting like this is more simpler for you. Who says no to this? Is this a false analogy? You said no. I know one person. Okay. Do I ever say anything which is like false analogy to you? Okay. Who says yes? Okay. Okay, you can leave now. I don't want to collect anything. Thank you. Okay. We're done for today.